how do you see the job market in Canada?
I see three different kind of people in Canada.
You've recently come to Canada, right?
My family, I have seen a lot of crash landings. I started with a negative. My ticket and my visa was paid by someone.
Which can be expensive. How did you find this opportunity here? Because people really struggle in finding a job.
I will explain how the companies work.
You should not. You're an expensive guy. So guys, welcome to another podcast in our show, and today's guest in our podcast is Azafar. Azafar is a very dear friend of mine, and he's working as a country manager at one of the leading companies. It's a global MNC, and they have big operations here in Canada, and Azafar is leading the show here. So in today's podcast, we will be talking about perspectives of working in Canada, basically finding jobs. What is the life here as an employee, as a senior manager, basically looking at the employee base from a senior management perspective, how to, what is it that goes around in the market when we talk about appraisals, jobs. So, Aspar, I believe you've recently come to Canada, right?
It's almost 1 year, 8 months.
1 year, 8 months.
Yeah.
So not that much of a time.
No, yeah.
So, how are you feeling? How is the overall feeling here?
I think it's pretty interesting in various ways. So there is a Canada which is outside. When you live outside the Canada, there is one Canada, and when you come inside the country, it's a different experience.
Okay.
But altogether, if I say we're happy, me and my family were very happy in the country. So every country would have their own challenges, right? Similarly, Canada has their own challenges, but I think the merits are bigger than the challenges, according to me. So we are pretty happy. Yeah.
Pretty happy.
Yeah.
Before this, you were in Dubai, right?
I lived in Dubai almost 16 years.
16 years?
Yeah. 16
And prior to that?
I was from Pakistan.
Pakistan.
Yeah. I left the country when I was 22 years old.
Young age.
Back in 2008. Yes. Yeah.
Why did you leave so early in life?
So I think the limitations in the country are pretty obvious. So when I was 22, my dad said, okay, you have to go and find yourself a life. So that's when I left. By the way, when I left the country, I started with a negative. So my ticket and my visa was paid by someone. So when I went to Dubai, I actually had to find a job. It was a 3 months visa back in 2008. And I had to find a job, start a new life, and also pay off the debt of the visa and the ticket. Yeah. And I came from a very small town, a small city. It was a city, and I had done bachelor's in business. And when I started my first job, I still remember that I was not even aware what a fax machine is. So it was my first week at job, and a customer called me, and I was on the phone, and he said, okay, fax me this document. And I said, fax? What is fax? And literally he had to tell me what is a fax machine.
How to use a fax.
Yeah. And he actually he over the phone, he first told me, okay, what to look for. It was like a printer kind of a thing, and you will have digits. I said, oh yeah, I found it. And then he actually told me how to fax. So this is where I started my life.
And this is where you are, leading the whole country, leading the whole company, in a new country, North American market, which is I believe it's a very good and a big achievement, right?
Yeah.
So far, for people who don't know, Asfar is leading the company, spearheading this company here in Canada. And when you talk about Dubai, Asfar, how is life in Dubai in terms of somebody who's working as an employee? Okay, before a senior manager, you're an employee of a company, right? So how is it as an experience as an employee back in the country, especially Dubai, when people are comparing Dubai with Canada a lot? And how is it, better, or, in whatever words you may want to put it, how is it different than here in Canada?
It's a good question. So the way I would answer it is that both countries are different.
Okay.
And in my opinion, they are not comparable.
Okay.
Yeah. And the reason being, okay, so when I lived in Dubai many years, and Dubai is very interesting. It has a lot of possibilities, and like I said, I started my life from negative, right? So whatever I am today, I achieved in Dubai. I learned there. My kids are born there, so we have a lot of memories in the country. So big picture, Dubai is a place where you can go and you can be no one, but you can become someone. And accessing Dubai is pretty easy. So if someone has to access Dubai from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, or even Philippines, it's pretty simple. You just buy a visa and go to Dubai, find a job. There you go. In Dubai, it's very interesting that, okay, visa application document, you have the liberty to put whatever title you want to put there. You can put managing director, you can put sales manager, you can put sales executive, accountant, whatever you want to put. They will give you a visa. So what is written on the job document does not mean anything in Dubai.
Okay.
They will give you whatever you want, right? It's like fully customizable country. You can have any kind of car you like. You can have any job title. You can eat any form of food. You can do what you like. So it's like a very free environment where you can be yourself, but you have to afford it yourself.
Correct.
So there is no backup support to where your life has to be. So your life could be at 0.0 or 0.100. It's up to you. Totally up to you. So when I look at Dubai is very interesting for people who are single and they have limited responsibilities, because the moment you start getting married and you have kids, then the story changes, because the schooling system, the healthcare system works very differently as compared to Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. It's all privatized, and people would not have access to schools or hospitals unless you pay for it.
Okay. Which can be expensive.
Can be expensive. It all depends on what we call expensive, right? So we can always argue the fact that, okay, Dubai is tax free, but on the flip side, when you live there with, like, for me, my wife, and my 3 kids, you have to pay. So many people have the mindset that, okay, if they are in Dubai, their kids have to go to Desi schools, right? So my argument is that if I decided to leave Pakistan, or if someone decided to leave India or Sri Lanka or Bangladesh, why would I want my kids to be part of the same education system again? So it's something that I left,
Correct.
that is not good for me. Now, how do I think that the same thing will be good for me, for my kids in a different country?
How can the same Desi school be justified when you're not in?
Yeah. So if I'm living in Dubai, I already decided to leave my own country. I'm living in Dubai, I would put my kid in a British school or American school or Australian school. This is how I will think, right? So now when you pick a British school will start somewhere between $7,000 to $10,000 per year school fees of kindergarten.
Correct. Which is very expensive.
Well, it's expensive, yeah, of course.
Then, like you mentioned that, Dubai is a free country. You can mend your ways. You can be free. You can, build yourself as long as you can afford. And so do the videos on social media, the TikTokers and everything. If a country which is that good, why do people want to still make their way towards, say, US, UK, Australia, and then more importantly, Canada? Why do you think people, or what could be a motivating factor for people to move out?
So when I was in Dubai, I was heading the Middle East. So all Middle East countries like Saudi Arabia, Dubai, Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait, they were all under my territory. Now the thing is, if you look at the population, so if you speak about Emirates has their own people, Emiratis, right? And then you have expatriates, like people who are from outside, from different countries, right?
Okay.
Now, when you look at the population band of Emirates, let's say Emirates, you will see a big spike from the age of 25 till the age of 40. Okay. So there's a big population sitting in the country of this age band.
Okay.
But then after 40, you will see the stats, the number of people who are older starts declining.
Okay.
And the reason is, the moment you start having your kids, you would want to either move to a developed country where you can sustain yourself, right?
Okay.
Like in my family, I have seen a lot of crash landings. And people come to Middle East. It's nice, it's easy, accessible. But then by the time they approach the age of retirement, they have to go back to their country. So now there is a big gap of expectations and realities, because let's say someone left the country, left any country, like even Bangladesh or Sri Lanka or India. If you left the country in 1990, and after 30 years, now you want to go back, everything has changed. Your world has become upside down, right? So the reason I use the word crash landing is because when people of my family left and went back to Pakistan, they really struggled, right? Because they have integration problem in the system, right? Because Dubai is super clean and neat in terms of the system. So there is no corruption in the system. It's very straightforward. It's very smooth, right? So the moment if you spend 30 years in a system which is clean, transparent and straightforward,
Try to go back.
Okay. You will be surprised.
Hence the crash landing.
That's why I said crash landing, because they cannot survive.
Yeah. Makes sense. So I hear you, that once people are used to the lifestyle that they're there in Dubai, they do not want to, go back to the same system, mainly because the kids would not be able to accommodate, or they themselves would not be able to. So I had a word today with one of my clients. He's from Sudan. So people from Sudan, he said, a year back they left the country, and now one of his kids is just 1 and the other one is 4. He said, I can't go back. I'm always worried. I'm always in a situation or a state where I'm terrified that what if my job goes away? Where will I go? So yes, I totally understand your fact that people do not always have the option to go back. So they start to build more ways where they can reach the other countries, right? So
yeah.
So coming over to your professional experience, you can quickly tell me that what exactly is your professional background like, so that we can then try to estimate, or rather try to understand how your journey from Middle East, where you started your career, towards here in Canada would be. So what exactly is your professional background?
So I started my career in sales.
Okay.
This is where I started. And I think I've been in sales all my life. I joined TVH. This is the most relevant one because I've been in the company for a long time. So I joined TVH in 2012.
Okay.
And I joined as a team manager for Middle East. And at that moment, we were only a small setup, but very diverse. So it was a combination of different nationalities on the business. And when we look at the customer side, we had people from across the globe, because Middle East is pretty diverse, right? So I was exposed to different cultures, different environments, different kind of characters, right? Different people, different systems. It was pretty interesting. So all my life I have done sales. Even in Canada, I'm responsible for sales and operations. But I think I'm more towards market management and market growth, right? So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. So, how did you, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of the larger audience, how did you find this opportunity here? And, because people really struggle in finding a job. So, how did you help yourself in finding this opportunity?
So, I came for the same company. So, I was like kind of promoted through this position, right, from Middle East.
Within the company?
Within the company itself, yeah. So, my experience for Canada is pretty different than some of the people who are struggling at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. So, for anybody who's inside a company, I'm not asking you how you made your way, but I'm asking, say, for example, somebody is working in an MNC. How do you think one initiates the conversation, or one tries to find a way here in the North American market? Because we see that normally companies or IT companies or the bigger consulting firms, they all have local offices in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver. But I very often get this question that, okay, how do I initiate this conversation with my manager? So you being a senior manager also, and you've actually gone through this journey. So what are the basic anecdotes you can give that somebody can initiate this conversation, or probably find an opportunity here?
In my opinion, it's there is no practical way of asking this question, right, to a manager or to a company. I will explain how the companies work, right? Okay. The way our company works is pretty large. So we are like 7,000 people across the globe. It's a pretty large company. And I think when you come to a certain point in your career or in such a large organization, every large company has their own value systems that they are following, right? And part of the things that companies are trying to do now is international mobility. Some companies really push for it because it encourages diversity, right? I think if I would give an advice, my advice would be build yourself into a person who is more adaptable to different cultures, different environments, because the way everything is going is people want an open-minded person, right? I'm not saying I'm open-minded. I might be biased in some things, but I think this is what companies are looking for. And then when we as humans are able to connect with different cultures and different environments, I think this is where the journey starts, because it opens doors for you to explore opinions of other people. And then you learn how to respect other people, right? And then you also learn how to manage expectations when there's so much diversity, right? One of the reasons I got this opportunity for being promoted was I had very intense experience or exposure with different backgrounds and nationalities, and I think I did a good job, honestly, right? And our region performed very well when I was doing Middle East, and even the employee satisfaction was pretty high. So I think it's how you manage, because when you become a leader, it's more about managing people, right? So in my opinion, success is achieved by acquiring the knowledge. Knowledge is one thing, but I think one important element is wisdom to process that knowledge, right? And when we say wisdom to process that knowledge, I mean that how our character is in line with moral values, and how can we still be open and not being biased, right?
That's very deep.
Yeah. So I think in my opinion, we can always have all the knowledge of the world, but if we lack wisdom to establish that knowledge, it will not work.
Correct.
Right? There has to be a combination. Yeah. And this is the combination I've been working on all my life. So I've been working 16 years, and I always have the feeling that today is my day of improvement. I have to learn something, right? And to be honest with you, I am very careful what I think, how I think, and how I process my thoughts. Because part of who I am is very much, how do I say it? What will be the right word? So part of who I am is something that is sensed by anyone who meets me. And the way I talk, the way I look, my gestures, my posture, right? And the way I interact, right? So if those basic signals of my human self is not giving the right signals to the other party, it's not going to match, it's not going to work, right? So there has to be a comfort zone between me and the other party. Could be an employee, could be a customer, could be a government official. This is where it starts, right? So in my opinion, it's a combination.
So being self-aware in
self-awareness, yes.
Self-aware is something that you intend upon, and it's a good thing that you're self-aware. You're aware about your actions, your thoughts, your speech, the way you carry yourself, and you're always open to. So the important pickup that I had is that you're open to mending yourself to create a balance between the party head and yourself. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So Asfar, I will ask you this question again also, which I'm about to ask. But first one will be, how do you see the job market in Canada as an employee? Later, I would want to ask you, how do you see the job market in Canada as an employer? Because you're an employer also, right? So first, I want to ask you, how do you see the job market? I'm sure you would not have explored as an employee, like in terms of opportunities. But how do you see the sense of market when you talk to people or you see opportunities around?
I like your question, honestly. Yeah. So we have customers across Canada, and in the first 1 year, 8 months, I have been to almost all the provinces, and every customer I met is looking for employees is hiring, right? Even when we speak about business, every customer has plenty of business sitting unattended,
Okay.
which could be fulfilled if they find the right people, right? So if someone tells me there's no jobs in the market, maybe it's not my experience. People I've been across to, they have a lot of jobs, right? Now, next question you will ask me is, then why don't people get jobs, right? People
Correct.
complain all the time. So I can tell you as an employer, right? As an employer, when we post a job, on every posting, we have not less than 1,000 applicants.
Correct.
Right? And many people approach me on LinkedIn and they say, okay, we want a job, but this is not how companies function, right? Now, when we get a job application, maybe it's 1,000, we sincerely screen all the jobs, because as an employer, for me, it's very important to hire the right person. Now, it all depends on what level of job an applicant is applied for, right? So in Canada, the most important part when it comes to people is that, okay, the rules and regulations of Canada are very strict when it comes to people, right?
Correct.
So when we are hiring someone who would be managing people, we look at those applicants with a different lens, because we have to make sure that the applicant has to fit the criteria of managing people in Canada, right?
Correct.
Because a lot of people that we come across from different Asian countries or African countries, they have a different style of working because there's cultural differences, right?
So the exposure to the culture which you were talking about
so we do consider that, okay, let's say if I have a job of sales manager, right? And we have 1,000 applicants. Out of those 1,000 applicants, I'm sure 500 applicants will be from either Asian countries or African countries.
Correct.
Yeah. When we look at those profiles, we always try to look for consistency on how consistent they had been in their career. And the second thing, we look at their responsibilities that they have carried upon and what they're telling on their CVs.
Okay.
And people with consistent careers in our industry, we do call them. And then we do ask them questions which will enlighten us to understand what have been their roles, what was their responsibility, because if we speak about Middle East or Asia or Africa, the working style is very different.
Correct.
Right? So the customer facing jobs, we are very careful. Now, when it comes to the warehouse jobs, there we look at people who are more consistent in doing what they're doing, because it's a hard job, right? So when we as an employer, we always want to hire the right person, right? But even then we still struggle, because the kind of applicants who are applying, either they have changed their CVs, which means they were something else and they have 5 different CVs, and you can just look at the CV and they say, okay, this is not a real CV, right? Because people do customize CVs, right? I don't know. I never did, but okay, people do.
People do nowadays.
Yeah. So customized CVs are very obvious, right? So we don't really entertain those CVs.
So what you're saying is, as an employer, a lot of time goes in terms of shortlisting, scrutiny, and I'm sure. So when I was speaking to your HR previously, so they spend a lot of time on ATS and using all the possible.
Honestly, we
tools
do. We do. Yeah.
So good. So that's interesting to know that people, when they submit an application, they are being heard. Once they're not, I think if they're not getting their foot through the door, they need to better work out on their resumes and probably building a profile, probably including more references, to show what kind of work they've done. Is that something that you think that will help?
Honestly, we never do. We don't select people based on references, right?
Okay. But a profile presentation in terms of a CV, do you think that's something that can help anybody in terms of application?
I'm kind of unique. These things don't really attract me.
Okay.
I don't really look for a fancy profile. Okay. For me, it has to be. So normally when I'm interviewing, I will decide in the first 5 minutes if I'm hiring the person or not.
Okay.
If I'm not, I will not spend time speaking to that person.
That's interesting. You should not. You're an expensive guy. Okay. So as a senior manager, okay, now coming over to the work culture in Canada, as a senior manager, how do you think, because you've managed team in UAE, how do you think managing a team in Canada is way different than managing a team in say back home, not just UAE, back home?
That's a good question. It is different. Honestly, it's different. So when I've heard about Canadians, But okay, when I physically came to Canada, my first experience with a Canadian was on the airport.
Okay.
And they were pretty nice. I mean, the officers were super nice. I came to office. Everyone was super nice.
Okay.
But there is a level of, so I think there I would be a little bit biased. So when I speak about people in office settings, people who are born and brought up in Canada, they have a different way of doing things. And people who have come from different part of the world, they have a different style of doing things.
Okay.
And it's very obvious, right? What I experience with people, okay, as an employer, the biggest challenge here is keeping people on board. So one of the KPIs we have in the company is that we should not have people leaving the office. Maintaining the task force is one of our KPIs.
Retention,
right?
is a big.
Retention is very important, because for an employee, it costs us a lot of money to hire someone if
Correct.
you're using a recruitment company or even you're posting a job. And then you're also losing all the time that someone is not working in the position they should be working, right? So for us, hiring is serious business. People in Canada are very demanding, high expectations. And I think one of the things we struggle with is people who are job hoppers, right? Okay, in my opinion, as per my understanding, as of now, I see 3 different kind of people in Canada. Now
Okay.
you're smiling already.
No. I'm waiting for the answer.
Okay.
Trying to see where I fit.
Yeah. So the first category of people I found is they are super unsatisfied with their life.
Okay.
They want to have 5 houses, 6 cars. They want to pay off everything, retire by 40, right?
Okay.
These kind of people are so difficult to maintain because they will change their job every 6 months or 1 year. Or if they are inside your company, they will make your life miserable because they want to raise every 6 months, right? I think this approach is not correct because you are basing yourself off a company to pay off what you want to achieve in your life,
Correct.
right? In my opinion, it's the wrong approach, right? The second category of people is people who are really working hard, but their working hard is just to make the ends meet, right? So they are really struggling, right? But they would not put effort to learn something new or improve their lives, but they're just in a cycle and they keep round and round and round, right?
So average performers.
Average performers. And the third kind of people I've found is they are always looking at a way to trick the government, to find a way to either steal some taxes or do something shady, right? So, I mean, these 3 categories are very unique that I've found. And I barely find people who really want to seriously work constructively. It's like finding unicorns, honestly, in Canada. Maybe I'm too biased. I'm only 1 year, 8 months, but this is what my experience is.
No, that's pretty much one of the challenges that you face. So which brings me to the next question, that as a manager at one of the largest companies here in your domain, what are the biggest 3 biggest challenges you face as a manager on a day-to-day basis? I'm sure one is retention, as you mentioned. What would be the other 2?
So I think it goes back to our discussion of hiring, right? One of the second challenges we face is that as a company, we want to grow and we have plans to grow. Our customers also, they are short-staffed, right? So even how hard you want to grow, there are limitations, right? So we have plans, we discuss things with customers and they have plans. We try to marry our plans together. Doesn't work because of people, because lack of people, right? And it's a serious issue. This is the second challenge that I see on a day-to-day basis. Even today, I can point many things from last year that we haven't even touched this year because of lack of people or capable people to take responsibility, right? And you said 3 things. The third thing would be, no, there's no third thing. I think third thing would be also about people. Some people are very lazy.
How's it, what are your thoughts on, say, managing expectations here in terms of, say, you have a lot of laws to abide by in say, India, for example, where I come from. I could have, as a manager, I could have pushed my people to work till late. I could have, been a bit unreasonable in terms of putting more pressure on the on the employees. Like work-life balance was no question at all, and I'm sure here you have to follow all those strict rules. So,
Yeah.
as a manager again, so with that tight wiggle room, how do you find yourself? How do you find your way through?
Oh my God, it's honestly a very interesting one because when I came almost 2 years ago, my mindset was the Middle East mindset, right, or the Asian mindset.
Yeah,
We only worked for a salary,
yeah,
right? There's no hours. There's no concept of hours, right?
correct.
For me to understand the concept of hours took some time because on the paper there are hours, right?
Yeah,
In anywhere in the world outside Europe or North America, there are hours that people say, okay, you have to work these many hours, but in reality, no one speak about those hours, right? It's like you're looking for your paycheck after a month, and how many hours you put every day doesn't count. No one even thinks about it, right?
here in pay stubs you get 75 hours.
Yeah. So this was a new concept, and I think it's very interesting because it really creates a good. It's in favor of employees because here rules and regulations are so strict.
Correct.
It's all in favor of employees, nothing in favor of employers.
Correct. So, even I'm an employer, and whenever I'm talking to somebody, and that has trickled down to me when I'm managing my offshore staff as well. Uh, you know, when as a leader, I want some things to be done like right away, and when I know the day is over, I need to calm myself down. That okay, hold on to it. There's always tomorrow. I will do it tomorrow.
Oh.
And I have to hold on to my thoughts, and I can't pressurize. It's just gone into my whole system. I can't really go beyond hours now, and I'm sure you would also be feeling the hit. If not right now, probably in 2 or 3 years from now, you'll very well get accustomed to the concept, and you'll be managing in that way.
It's funny. I had when I came to Canada, I had to slow down, and
Oh yes.
second day I was in Canada. I had to buy furniture. So me and my wife, we had a truck. We went to Lyons, and actually our house was empty. Right? There was no furniture in the house. We took a house, but it was empty. So we go to Lyons, and at that moment there was shortage in furniture market. And we go to Lyons, and we on the display we like some furniture, a bed for my kids, and mattresses and sofas. And I told this guy, his name was Anil, and I said, Anil, I want this, I want this, I want this. I want delivered by the evening time. And he was like,
By the evening?
where did you come from?
Seriously? By the evening?
Because this is how we lived in Dubai, right?
Yeah.
You go there, you tell people, this is what I want.
Bhaiya pack kar do.
Yeah, this is what I want. Delivered by 6 p.m.
Yeah.
It will happen, right?
And
if
I'm
they don't
paying
have-
all cash up front.
Oh yeah, actually I had cash in my pocket, and he said, I said I have cash. I showed him my envelope. I said I have cash. I'll pay now. Deliver it today.
Right now.
He said no, it's not happening. The earliest delivery we have is like 6 weeks, and I was like 6 weeks. For me, it was a shock, right?
Yeah.
Because then I learned that people in Canada, they work their own pace. Everyone works on their own pace. It's a relaxed
You
pace.
can't push your way through. Like, you absolutely cannot push your way
There's
through.
no urgency. Eh?
Back home, there's no urgency. That's the biggest issue. Here, people are not
It's
ready
fun. I
to-
am enjoying it now. There's no urgency. Okay, relax.
I mean, so that's the biggest gap between our understanding and our clients back home. They are like, if they send us a message,
You have to reply
Sahil has
now.
to reply within 2 hours. No, that is not going to happen because we don't function that way.
Yeah.
We are now tuned in a different manner.
I had to
We-
detox.
So I have to put my schedule down. I have everything. I'll come to you when I come to you.
It is a good balance in Canada, honestly. I really enjoyed even while driving. I had to tone myself down because in Dubai you really drive. You drive and you're driving at 120, 140. Like it's not a big deal. Here, if you're in Brampton or Mississauga, you're driving at 40, 50.
60.
If you're lucky. And after every kilometer you have a signal, you have to stop.
And then you have those stop signs, and if you don't
Oh
stop,
yeah,
then
if you don't stop, then you have a problem. So this slow life, I'm enjoying it. But if you ask me, after living all these years in Middle East, I'm really kind of a workaholic person. So even on Saturdays and Sundays, even now, I have to find something to do because in the morning my energy level is very high. Right, I cannot stop myself from working, and after a few hours, then I slow down.
and this is the right moment when you touched on that topic, when second job comes into picture or a second career. So I will face this question in 2 or 3 parts, but back, a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about, say, people are, doing probably 2 or 3 jobs, or say they're job hoppers, or they want to earn more money. And then there was a third category that you talked about, that people are just trying to make their ends meet. Now, the issue here is that we all know that inflation has seeped into Canada. We all see housing crisis and all. Apart from all of that, let's talk about money. You know that back home, when people in Dubai, India, Pakistan, they work from 9 to 9, and their biggest complaint is that work-life balance nahi hai. So I don't have work-life balance. I'm working for the employer around the clock. I can come home at say 9 a.m. or say say 9 p.m. or whatever. When they come here, even if they're working 9 to 5, say for example they're being paid $3,000 a month, right? Now you know that that is not enough money to cover your expenses. Then they have to work 2 jobs. Then what happened to the concept of work-life balance? And how can you call that Canada has work-life balance? Because if you work 1 job, you're not able to meet your expenses. You have to work 2 jobs, right? You have to slog your way through, like couple of hours here and couple of hours here. Then don't you think job back home is better? At least you're working with one employer and you're able to meet your expenses, rather than working here 2 jobs to meet your expenses.
It's a good question, and maybe my opinion is too naive, but I think a majority of the people I see, they are trying to earn money to buy things that they want to show to other people, and so there should be. So I think as humans, we have to draw a line between what I need and what I want.
Wishes and needs.
Yeah, and I think sometimes I really feel that there is a kind of imbalance, because I think by default, even if I see people, even if they don't have money, they have some basic criteria they expect from Canada. They have to have a house with a backyard. This is their dream, because they have to struggle and push through it. They have to have a Honda Accord or a Honda Civic. It has to be a Honda or a Mercedes or BM. And then you have to have, so your family has to go out every Sunday or Saturday. You have to go out. You have to go for holidays. You have to have a big large screen TV. You have to have fancy clothes. You have to have brands. You have to have this. You have to have that, right? I think if we remove those I have to have thing from the equation, maybe life will become easier for people, for everyone, even for me, right? Even today when I look at my paycheck, I think majority of it goes on things that actually I don't need, right? That it goes in the basement or it goes somewhere in the house, and you don't even find it, right? We only find those things when we actually moving the house.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So I'm not saying that everyone is abusing money, but I think maybe it's good to revisit our expectations and what we expect from life, right? Because I mean, money is never enough. No matter how much money we earn, it's always less, right? But I think when people are looking at Canada or US or Australia or New Zealand, there is a promise that is being sold to them from the initial step, right? So the moment we start going to Canada, there is promise of a better life, right? So majority of the people who complain coming to Canada is their expectation is too high from a country, right? This is my naive perspective, but this is when I meet people, I talk to them, I try to understand why they're frustrated, right? And these are the reasons they want to achieve things which people have achieved in 20 years or 30 years, right? So they're going too fast, they're burning themselves out, right? And maybe not everyone is doing it, but many people are that I have met, they're really struggling to somehow do everything fast, become rich, and then retire, right? Look at yourself. I mean, how many years have you struggled before we are sitting here? How many years?
I think I've been through real downs of my life for about 4 years.
4 years, right? It didn't happen the first month,
no, not
the first year, right?
Not at all.
I already have seen your video of your story of that bus and that dirty water, and I still remember that video. And I was in Dubai when I watched your video. It was very interesting. It was kind of an eye opener, because this is how life is, right?
It's very hard. I think very rightly said that people have an expectation that they will land in Canada.
It's too high expectation,
and they will get a job like with a garland and all diyas around. Please come and work for us.
Yeah.
That is something that can happen to people, though. I'm not saying it cannot, but for most of the people, you will have to make your way through. You might have to upgrade, you might have to upskill, which I did.
Yeah.
And then you will start getting a job. The first or the second job might not be good paying, which happened with me again. This is a personal, thing. And for me, somehow my startup, my own business worked for me, and that was probably my destiny. And that was something that I wanted to do. So yes, I totally understand. What you're saying, that people have high expectations, and they should, rather than the expectation of a Mustang and a backyard, they should be ready to slog in the first couple of years, and then after they spent a couple of years, they can see where they're growing in terms of, right? So
I was visiting a customer, and I was going through their parking lot, and there was a nice Mustang.
Yeah.
And I was just happening to speak to this customer and said, "This is one of our warehouse workers. Warehouse workers and a Mustang, because warehouse worker normally earns like $17, $18 an hour, right?
Correct.
But they still buy these things because they want to impress someone.
Correct.
Somewhere, right? They want aspirations, right? Yeah. So I don't think this is really sustainable, honestly. Yeah. And one more thing that I would endorse you, that like I said, it depends on your moral values, right?
Correct.
Because no matter how difficult the situation is, if you stick to your moral values, you are bound to rise up. You're bound to rise up. There's no way things can hold you back. So no country, no situation can hold you back if your moral values are high.
Correct.
Right? Because your character is very strong. Right?
Correct.
This is what helped you. Even after 2 jobs, you found a way and you pushed through it, right?
Correct.
Because when people meet you, you know that, this is a genuine person. Not because I'm on your show, but you feel it, right? You know, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm very selective on who to meet, even with family, and because people who you meet, really, you have connections, and they try to influence your thoughts, right?
Correct.
So I'm very selective with that, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So I would not pick up a phone and call anyone randomly. I would not do that. I will never do that.
Especially sharing personal things, personal details. So, I mean, we've been more than working relationship. We've been friends for a very long time. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I totally understand that. I am more of, so I might appear to be a lot, open by the virtue of my profession and all, but overall I am a very closed person. I would take a lot of time to open up, still discussing my thoughts and all. So yeah. Okay, so when we're talking about aspirations, this, again, I want you to answer this as an employer, as a leader of of an important company here. Back home, when I was an employee, I was very open to seeing a raise or an appraisal, as we call it, of approximately 10 to 15%.
Yeah.
Like anytime below 10%, people are ready to leave the company, right? Back home, 10, 15, 30%, maybe 40% at times. In Canada, I've seen one of my friends, he got a bouquet chocolates with a 1.5% raise. Okay, so 1.5% of an appraisal versus 30%. I want to know 2 things. How do you decide that, only 1.5%, especially when the inflation is close to 8%, or say, index is growing? And how do you think the people here are managing their expenses and everything? How can they be happy with just a 1.5% raise?
I think there are a couple of things in this question. So I've seen also in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, everywhere. Normally, like in Belgium, if I'm not wrong, the merit increase of per year is just matching the inflation rate, which is normally below 1% in Europe, right? So they don't even expect anything above 1% if the inflation is not above 1%. But I think in Belgium there's a law that you have to match the inflation.
The inflation, okay.
I think please don't quote me, but I think there's a law,
of course,
right? But I agree with you that also in Middle East we saw increases of 10%, 15%, 20%, right? Because this was something which was.
I'm sure you would have received too.
No, I didn't. Unfortunately,
not in this company maybe, but you would have seen others. Your folks.
I've seen. Yeah. I think the way employers see it, I think there are two parties here. One is the employer, and the second one is the economy or the country, right? I think when you go to developed countries, the currency is pretty strong. Even the bank would not pay you 10%, 15%.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So I think there it makes sense that okay, if the cost of company goes up by 15%, 20% on the wages, then I think we as an employer will struggle to get those 20% from the market. It's so difficult because the market is very tight. It's a
Because the
small
company is not growing maybe that much.
yeah. 20% growth of the company is like, okay, 20%, wow, 20% is like something, right? Because normally the company would aspire to grow by 3% or 4% or 2.5%
Correct.
per year, right? So the pace that a developed country allows a company to grow is a very small wiggle room, right? This is one thing. Now, I have the same question because, okay, I am managing a large team in Canada, and when we raise wages in Canada, I have the same question to my HR. Okay, the inflation is this high. Okay, the increase is like 1.5, 2%, 2.5%, 1.5%, 0.5%, right? Now, I think there is a kind of an imbalance between how the system works, right? Because of various different factors, the companies cannot increase by this much, right? Even there is no law supporting by the government, which pushes the companies to grow to a certain extent, like 5%, 10%. I think this is something that has to come from the system itself, where we have different laws. I think this could be part of a system maybe that will allow at least matching the inflation rate.
Inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've seen companies don't grow as much as
It's difficult, man.
Yeah, it's very difficult, especially for larger juggernauts of a company.
Yeah.
It's hard. But on the other hand, I would still say your company is still paying a lot better than the entry level employers here. Say for example, entry level. I won't say which positions and all, but you guys are still paying a lot more than what you would see even at minimum wage. It's still there, but yeah, so depends upon how a company grows year on year. I think that's fair enough, because companies only growing say 2%, 3%, how can they offer a 10% wage increase,
Yeah.
right, to everybody? So yeah, makes sense. Okay, more of a work experience from a personal level now, right? So far we understood what your thought was from a managerial perspective, like from managing a team, but personally, you've gone to employers and all. Have you ever had discussions with friends and colleagues, like in terms of the job market? Are there still jobs available? Like, because we get a lot of comments, social media and everything. Okay, there's a lot of recession and there are no jobs. People are not even getting warehouse jobs whatsoever. So what is your take on that?
It's a good question. So I think the market is a little bit slow for the moment. We will be experiencing this slow in Q2 of this year as well.
Okay.
That's what we expect. Now, job market, I think, so this is how I see it. If we look at post-COVID time, right? A lot of companies, big, large companies, they experience extraordinary artificial growth, right, in the business. And at that moment, they hired a lot of extra workforce, right? Now, it was bound to happen that the market had to recalibrate, right? So the way I see it, what is happening now is recalibration, right? People are losing jobs, but it's kind of market is settling down to its actual state where it has to be, right?
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Interesting. So from an employer or from a business perspective, I think that's a very interesting thought. So how do you think business is in the market today? Like, from a Canadian market, we are seeing so many bankruptcies happening. There was Pride Group that filed for restructuring very recently, and tons of banks in America have collapsed, and in Canada now we are seeing a wave of bankruptcies. Since you're very closely associated with construction, agriculture by virtue of your products, how is the business for you? I mean, for your company, and obviously because you're providing parts to other companies. So the larger question is, how is their business?
So the spare part market is pretty dynamic, right? When the reason I use the word dynamic is because even if the market is bad or good, we still have demand, right?
Okay.
Because let's say, because we are linked to construction, material handling, and agriculture, even if the market is slow, the benefit we have as a company is that people, when they stop buying equipment, they repair more equipment. So when we had the worst times of the economy globally, like 2008, 2019, and even in the past, we had record sales,
Interesting. I never had that view of the
Yeah.
market.
So even now, we are not
It's like a
doing.
slingshot, pulling back.
Yes. So now we are experiencing extraordinary demand for our products. So even though we hear that several companies are off hiring, we are still hiring because of where we are going. And secondly, as a company, we try to have an approach which is more long term.
Okay.
We would not jump the gun and try to hire X amount of people because today we have a Y project. Normally, when we as a company we take steps, we are taking steps slowly.
Okay.
And if we hire, so if we increase headcount by X, this X is active for the next 5 or 10 years. We don't go X minus 1.
Okay.
We don't do it.
You're not like startups, obviously. So
Yeah.
because in startups we hire, and then once the demand drops, they fire.
Yeah, but like you said, it is not looking fancy outside. It is difficult. People are losing jobs. It is not the best situation, but it is what it is.
It is still not recession, right? Like, would you call it recession, or would you call it, still want to call it
I think we're
recalibration?
entering recession. That's how I see it.
Okay. Do you think there are more bad times to come?
Depends for who.
So,
I think so. Maybe.
you think so? So, after you've had conversations with your construction clients of late, how do you think is the reality of housing crisis in Canada? And why do you think, if there is housing crisis, why do you think people are not easily making houses? Like, how tough is it to make houses? Why can't they just go ahead and make it and end the housing crisis?
I think there are a couple of things in active in this situation. I think one element is the government side, where all the permits and the quotas are so complex too. It's a lot of bureaucracy, right? And the second element is what we see in the technical market, which could also be true for the construction market. That nowadays the new generation is not really willing to work with their hands. They want to get rich yesterday, right? So I really don't like, but this is what is happening. Even in our industry, people running companies with pure technical skills are almost on the verge of closing or for sale, because they are not able to find the right people who have those skills that can really make them go forward. Right? For the construction segment, I think there is also a supply problem of people who are willing to work outside. It is a real problem, because in Canada, when you build a house, you also need some form of skill to work with wood and all that process, right?
Correct.
And a guy working in either Middle East or Asia as a construction worker cannot one-to-one replace a guy working in Canada, because in Canada you have Red Sea people. If you're installing a bulb or electric wiring, you have to have a license.
You have to go by the codes.
Yes.
And then there are permits and approvals and
So I think even for those people, there is kind of a shortage of those people who can actually do the work. Yeah.
Do you think the government announcing so much support, and now we see Sean Fraser and see even the Prime Minister providing so much relief and all, do you think that will play a bit of a role to cool down the market, or you think or you have no comments on that?
I think when election is near, some people do funny things. This is one of the funny things they're doing.
Yeah. Because my personal opinion is that blaming one category of the community, for example, international students, is not fair when you justify that there is housing crisis because of immigrants. I don't think that is fair, because you need to introspect, and I think them making it difficult to construct, permits, inspections, not availability of people to inspect and all, I think that is where the hindrance is. Taxes and zoning is a big issue. I think zoning is also a very important issue, which Canada has to refocus. So just like any other countries, election is near. Hopefully some zones will open up and we might see. But we've seen Dubai grow from where it was 20 years ago. In just 2 decades, it's magnificent, right? Are there any learnings that Canada can take from that country? Because it's a very small city, like it's a city, right? So Dubai is a city in the Emirates. So when a city can grow and attract global population, and they've grown in terms of immigrants, like we today Canada is sitting at just 40 million, and we can't even accommodate 500,000 every year. And now we are saying that okay, we are done, we don't have infrastructure. When you look at Dubai, they grew massively. Like they were bringing in more people and then they were growing also. What are the key three learnings that we as a country can take from them?
I think, like I said in the beginning, that Dubai and Canada are not comparable.
Okay.
And I truly mean it, because I think the way things work in Dubai is pretty different than in Canada. And secondly, if you look at the geography of Middle East, it's very near to various Asian countries, right? And people are more open to anyone who wants to come, because there's no blockage on any nationality, or you can just buy a visa for like, I think it's $200 and you can just go
Correct.
to Dubai, right?
Correct.
So I think that their access to workforce is the moat is pretty wide, right? They can have X people or Y people based on what they're doing, right? Overnight. And at the same pace, they also change things. Like the way Dubai works is basically they plan things and they execute them, right? Because
Good executionist.
there is less discussions, right? And because it's a kingdom, right? It works in a different pattern, right? If they want to build 20 towers, this is what is happening. Yeah. But whereas in Canada, it's not the case, right? You have to have it's a different system, right? You have to
There has to be a bill passed and then
there's a system in place, right? There's a system in place. So I think they're different. What they can learn from each other, it's a very hard question, honestly. Yeah. I don't know how to answer this one.
That's okay. But I think,
because these are very different countries, different setups, different way of working, different people, different benefits.
but I think, I personally think that Dubai has done extremely well.
They've done a good job.
They've done a very good job. I went there a couple of years ago and I then went very recently. Magnificent job. I personally think there's one thing that if Canada can learn would be to make it more easier for processes to happen, or rather approvals to come in. If they can probably have, like they did for Express Entry, right? So they had a preset of clearances. If you fit into this criteria, okay, a PR is on the way. Similarly, if they can do something to their construction or to permits or whatsoever, if you fit into certain criteria, it's a pre-approved method, maybe something like that. And lesser bureaucracy, and more decision makers on the front end. If that's something that can be done, so I think.
I don't know, for some reason, when I came to Canada, I sincerely think that Canada is more advanced than Dubai in terms of systems. The banking system is very strong.
Oh, it is.
In Canada.
Everything is interlinked.
Like, if I was doing a good job in Dubai, I lived there 16 years. I had no clue what the credit history is. Like in Dubai, even if you're earning $2,000, it's so easy for you to get a personal loan, 10 credit cards, 3 cars, because there is no link between banks and your income, right?
That's because of the population size also. Like they're a big population.
It's a decent size of population. It's all immigrants. Not even immigrants. I would call them workers. They're not immigrants, right?
Yeah.
But there are no immigrants in Canada, in Middle East. They're all workers, right? Because they're bound to go back to their countries.
Correct.
Right? So I personally think, maybe my opinion is biased, but after living in Middle East, I think Canadian system is better than Dubai system. It is slow, but I think it's slow for good reasons, because when people are entering Canada, they give you the right to live and then you become a Canadian citizen, which is not the case for any Middle East country, right? So when it comes about giving citizenship, I think there has to be some pre-checks. Even though we can always question what kind of pre-checks they're doing, but okay.
For sure. Okay. On the rear end of this discussion, there is one topic that is always close to my heart. And what do you think is the reality of a second profession / a startup in Canada? By startup, I don't really mean a company startup, but say, for example, people here have second professions. For example, somebody is a mortgage professional, somebody is a realtor, or maybe somebody wants to start up something like a small grocery store or a bakery store, something like that. How much do you think, what is the reality of that concept? Do you think it's easy Do you think people can find time? Do you think it's doable? And what are your thoughts around that?
I find it pretty interesting, honestly, because I think there's tons of opportunity doing various different things. There are a lot of gaps in the market. I think the biggest gap is if you can do something with your hands, skills, right? That's my personal opinion, but I really see that there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of ways you can make money, a lot of things you can do very easily. Like even if you are willing, you can even start up a small cleaning business, clean houses, right?
One of my friends did. He's doing extremely well.
Yeah, even I see people here. They cut grass and they earn money. They shovel snow. They earn money, right? From small things to big things. Even it's very funny, but in my first house that I was staying in Canada, our microwave stopped working, and I called the landlord. Okay, it's not working, and he said, okay, I'll replace it. So he sends a guy. And a huge SUV stops outside my house, and this guy comes in, and he was, if I'm not wrong, he was wearing, I like sneakers, leather sneakers. So this guy was wearing very nice sneakers.
Expensive ones.
Very expensive, maybe more than $1,000. Yeah. And this guy comes in, I think he installs our microwave and goes out, right? And his vehicle was his business. He's having a fun life, and he also works when he wants to work, but the pay rate of doing these jobs is pretty high, right? So I think if people are willing, there are many jobs, and people who sees no opportunities, they will never find opportunities, right? But I see a lot of gaps.
You have to be willing.
I think if you're willing, you can do so many things in Canada, honestly.
This is one thing I love about this country. And I was in India, and I had the same entrepreneurial spirit like I had here. In India, it was so difficult to start up with the number of steps involved, trying to reach the market, the way we want to look at the market, the way our friends and families look at us, right? All of that comes into picture. And then somehow, I don't know why, it felt so difficult to do something. I just wanted to say, for example, back home, I had this one idea. Out of the many ideas I had, I wanted to do coffee business. Okay. It was so difficult to start up. I don't know why. Maybe the whole system didn't allow me to do that. Maybe availability of resources, something like roasters and all. But as soon as you step foot into this country, second profession just comes, just like this.
By
just
itself,
think of it.
Think about it and you have it.
I've seen people make money just by giving tiffins to students, right? And they're making good money. Yeah. If you look at the volume, say if you're giving, say, $200 for a month for one student, if you have 100 students buying from you, $20,000 on the side. You get somebody to help in making rotis and all, and you're done. Right? So imagine $20,000 plus your job that you're working 9 to 5. I think that's good money one can make.
My neighbor is making rotis.
Yeah.
She approached my wife, would you like to make rotis and curry? Okay, we are a small family, but okay. People do so many things. Yes. I'm surprised, honestly.
And
you can never do this in Dubai, by
correct.
The way.
You can't do that.
Yeah, because you are on a work permit, you cannot work for anyone.
They looked, and more importantly, people look down on you. Okay, so your community.
It's a good point, actually. Yeah. You know why? Because I noticed this in people in Canada, especially Desi people coming from Asian countries. They think it's a matter of respect working in the office. So they don't like to work with hands. They don't like warehouse jobs because they think their life is being downgraded.
Yes.
But think about it. I mean, you're earning hourly, right? Which means you can earn X because the office guy will earn Y. It's fixed Y, but you are X. You can go X plus 1, X plus 2. You can earn overtime, right? And then the fun part is if you're working hourly, you can be flexible.
Correct.
Right? But if someone is feeling ashamed of working with hands, then there's a problem.
Correct.
Right? And I see this.
That's a culture problem.
It's a cultural problem, right? Because people have a lot of big egos, right? They want to move to an office, but I don't understand why. Right? So I think whatever you mentioned is, I also love this thing about Canada that, okay, there's so many opportunities if you're willing to work.
And the acceptance and resources to grow. Yeah. The only thing that I think Canada lags would be logistics. People getting into e-commerce based products. Shipping some products to people would at some times cost more than the product
That's true.
itself.
Yeah.
So
It's very expensive
that
to
is,
transport.
and then the land mass, the number of population to cover that's a huge cost to cover.
Yeah.
I think that's something which we will be able to cover only in times to come, whenever we have more population and more warehouses and more storages. But for now, I think that's the only challenge that this market has to offer, right? One last important topic which I have in mind, which I've saved for the last, is you see how a lot of videos and a lot of people come to us, online. You get to view that, okay, we are leaving Canada. Okay. People having spent many years here in this country after the whole struggle and all, they say that, okay, we are not happy here, we are leaving. So two parts to answer, two questions. One, how real it is on ground that you see, how real do you see, you get to hear. Second, would these people be able to integrate back into their home countries? Do you think, what is the viability of this concept of leaving Canada and going back?
Yeah, it's a good question, honestly. And I think majority of the people who go back, they are kind of confused. You know why? Because many people I meet, they want to become Canadians because they want to travel. They want a Canadian passport, right? And because when I was in Dubai, many people who have become Canadians, they go back to Dubai and start living there. And because so me and my wife sometimes discuss, and I ask my wife, would you want to go back and live in Middle East? And she would say no, right? Because I think you have to look at the overall package that Canada offers, right? You don't have to look at one thing, right? So in my opinion, people who are leaving, they are coming with some preset expectations. Their expectations are very high. And when they come here and the expectations are not met, they are kind of hopeless, or they feel that they have been cheated, or because everywhere you go, everywhere in the world you go, you will have challenges. Every government, every country, every city will have their own challenges, right?
Including Canada.
Yeah, including Canada, right? When I come to Canada and I have a backyard, I walk 100 meters away and there's a park. I can go outside and run wherever I want. Whatever time I want is safe, right? A lot of nature, clean air to breathe, clean water. You can open your tap, drink water, right? You can drive one side 50 kilometers and you are in a beautiful place, mountains and trees, right? Valleys. Then I think when we spoke about businesses, if you are open to work, you have opportunities, right? Acceptance, you said acceptance is there. You go anywhere in Canada, you're not seen as someone from Pakistan or India. They accept everyone, right? We accept everyone.
Correct.
Right? So I think there are a lot of merits, and why people leave, I don't understand, because I've seen some videos, people posting 20 reasons why I'm leaving Canada, 10 reasons why I'm leaving Canada. I think part of the things that, the way I understand is, some people make videos just for the sake of having more hits and more views, right?
Viewership.
Yeah, because there's more inclination towards negativity.
Correct.
Right? Because whenever you see negative things, because they will also make a nice thumbnail and say, okay, their eyes are popping out and they'll say, okay, I'm leaving Canada, or they're making a sad face, I'm leaving Canada. I think they're confused, honestly.
I don't see a lot of people leaving Canada.
I don't think it's true.
Very, 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 very few. I mean, like the rate at which people are flowing in and the rate at which people are leaving, there's a big, big disparity. These are just conversations that people generally want to have at large forums, but when push comes to shove, when you tell them, okay, why didn't you leave?
Yeah. They
would not leave.
I would not disagree that there are issues with even I can't buy a house. I'm now 2 years in Canada. I cannot buy a house, right? The reason is that the housing market is over the roof.
Yeah,
it's a reality, right? But then, okay, there has to be a balance. Like I said, okay, you have to understand, or we have to understand that, okay, what is the bench, what is the ultimate goal of life? One thing, and how much we are willing to give away to achieve that goal of life.
correct.
Right? So I have not met anyone thinking about leaving Canada. I do meet people who are confused, who are dissatisfied, but that's a different story. I think they have been either cheated or misinformed, whatever. They have come here and they go.
Or they're just exploring the options. Like, that's something that's hidden in their heart.
How long a man can live, man? 100 years, 50 years.
Or that, it's a deep desire that's there within, and they're always discussing that question on an open forum. But I don't see them leaving.
Yeah, I was watching one video yesterday. It was a YouTube video, and a guy left Canada and he was making a podcast. And so the funny thing about the story was that now he has become a Canadian. So he's proud to be a Canadian holding a Canadian passport, but he hates Canada. And I was like, what a hypocrite, right? I mean, he doesn't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Right? So you have come to the country, you have taken all the benefits, your kids have taken all the benefits. Now you have nationality. You use this passport to go across the globe, right? Because you think it's a powerful passport. You feel proud. You tell people you're proud of it. On the flip side, you're also talking bad about the same country that you belong to now,
Which is
right?
not good, yeah.
And I think this is one issue that we will come across in Canada in the future, is because many people do not have sense of ownership or sense of belonging in the country, right? And this is very important, right?
Our kids will have that.
Yeah. My daughter, she wants to be a police officer, right? She's 5 years old, but she likes it. And I would want her to be a police officer because this is where I want to be now, right?
Correct.
I want my kids to be part of this system. I don't want them to shy away that, okay, today they have to shy away from the system because they have to be safe, or they have to do the nice things or easy things.
Correct.
I think if we have taken a decision to come to a country, we should be willing to also live for the country.
Be a part of it.
Be a part of the country, right?
Correct. Great. So this brings us to the end, and thanks a lot for sharing all your valuable views, opinions, right? They mean a lot to us, and they mean a lot to me personally. I totally respect, what your opinions are.
Thank you.
But yes, we had a good chat. Thanks for making time out of your busy schedule to be here with us. And I'm sure people will get to learn something, and just be what we are, being Canadian.
Yeah, being Canadians, yes,
being
of course.
Canadians.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
And thanks for being here.
Thank you, Sahil.